for the Indians. 1 run on, let's see, 1 hit. That's all. We got 1 goddamn hit.
You can't say goddamn on the air.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
From the Gateway Lounge in Sioux Falls, it's Nobody's Listening Anyway. Here are your hosts, John Gaskins and Matt Zimmer.
It's our college football preview edition, part 2, Division II. Augustana and the University of Sioux Falls are 2 schools, 2 blocks away from each other in Sioux Falls. Once again, 2 of the better teams in the Northern Sun Conference, a league that has, given the year, 15, 16 teams. They are picked to finish 3rd, Augie, and 4th USF this year, behind, of course, the common behemoths from the state of Minnesota, Mankato and Duluth. So, here at the Gateway Lounge, John Gaskins, Matt Zimmer, and a look into the Vikings and the Coup, who always have a legendary, it seems, key to the city game every year.
It was legendary last year, for sure.
Unbelievable. We'll talk about that. It's October 3rd this year at Augie, and both of these squads get a head start on the season. The Jacks and the Yotes are on Saturday, and if you want to hear our 1-hour preview composing of both of those squads, check it out at SiouxFallsLive.com or wherever you find your podcasts on Happy Hour. These 2 teams start on Thursday, August 27th. The Vikings will be at Missouri Western in St. Joe, Missouri, and the Cougars will be at home hosting Black Hills State at Bob Young Field. So these are 2 schools you have covered a long time. This was your first college football beat over 20 years ago. And, coaches have changed. The Coup were ruling the NAIA at that time. Augie started to get good in Division II under Brad Salem. It got a little easier once the Jacks and the Yotes and the Bison and the Sioux were out of the NCC.
And they both built new stadiums. That had something to do with it, too.
And
Howard Wood Field.
From, Brad Salem to Mike Aldrich and now Jerry Oshevsky for a baker's dozen years. And at USF, it's gone from, obviously, Kalen DeBoer to Jed Stuger.
Well, Bob Young.
Well, who is he again?
Yeah.
Bob to Kalen to Jed Stugart to John Anderson, and now Jim Golgowski already in his 4th year. Save for 1 season, they've had a winning season each of the last 3 decades. So a lot of quality football at this level in our state. They don't get as much attention, but they have more local players than our big state schools, and they're just consistently really solid and worth our time.
I cannot stress enough to people who don't know how good the football is in the Northern Sun. I think the average football fan wouldn't notice the difference as far as the caliber of play. Now, that's nothing to take away from SDSU and USD. I'm more saying, the average person doesn't notice.
Yeah.
You can notice, and the crowds are smaller. That's the big difference. But we've seen so many players have gone from USF or Augustana to play professional football. We've seen recently, since the transfer portal became a thing, how many of these guys move up to the FCS level and become productive players. We just got done talking about our last show. 2 of the best players on South Dakota State's defense are guys that played at Wayne State last year. So it's a tremendous level of football. If you got a Saturday where you don't have anywhere to be or one of your favorite teams isn't playing, I cannot recommend enough that you go out to Bob Young Field or Jim Heinitz Field to watch these teams play, because it's really, really good football.
You don't have to carve your whole day around it either, and it doesn't bust your wallet as much.
Yep, and you can drink beer at Augie at least.
Yes, you can.
Get on that, Coup.
Yeah, right. They're both fantastic facilities to watch games at, and, Augie just carved into a little hill there with the pine trees and the scoreboard on one of the end zones, the campus on the other. And with some delicious beverages. I can't imagine there's too many Division II settings in the country that are prettier or more enjoyable. And Bob Young Field has its own flavor and its own vibe as well. It's it was built back when USF was just the 800-pound gorilla in the NAIA, and you still feel that mystique as you're there, and they still put together good teams. By the way, thank you for mentioning Jim Heinitz Field, because we didn't mention Jim Heinitz among the great Augie coaches as well. The field's named after the man, and he's still on their radio.
Because he never got to coach in it, yeah.
That's right.
Probably would have had a better record if he did.
Well, let's start with Augie, because Jerry Oshevsky, year after year, is pumping out winners all but 2 of his seasons out of his first 13 have resulted in winning records, but his last 2 have been his best 2-year stretch. It used to be in the Heinitz days. Augie was the school in the old NCC. You're going up against all these state schools in the Dakotas, and you've said it, he's admitted it, like you kind of gear up for one good year out of every 3 or 4, and kind of get a senior class built. But now they can do it every year for Coach OJ. 9+ wins each of the last 2. Northern Sun Conference Championship 2 years ago, a 9-0 start and a number 5 ranking last year before losing the last 2 and missing the playoffs. But in your own mind, why? Why is Augie now ascended to consistent top billing in the NSIC?
There's a lot of reasons. You mentioned earlier, I mean, the NSIC is not as difficult as the league as the North Central. That's not to take anything away from Augie. That's just a fact. But also moving into Kirkby Over Stadium, Jim Heinitz Field, that was a game changer. They did not have the facilities to compete back then. And it's not just the stadium. It's also the football building where the coaches' offices and the weight room and everything are. That's been a game changer for them. It's been almost 20 years now, if you can believe it. Jim Heinitz Field was built in 2009, so we're going into, year 17 of that stadium. It still feels new. I was just out there on Monday, and I was saying that to Zach Borg. We were out there. I was like, this still feels like a new stadium. So that's been a big part of it. But I think Jerry Olszewski gets a ton of credit. I remember when they were interviewing candidates for that job, it was him and 3 or 4 other guys who were all highly qualified. They would have been in good shape with any of the guys they hired. But I remember OJ was the last one to interview, and the last one, they let me interview all the candidates. And I remember after interviewing OJ last being like, I'm pretty sure this is the guy. He just seemed very confident in exactly what he wanted to do. He had a very specific plan of, this is how I'm going to go win at Augustana. He was coming from Division III, St. Olaf, and it took a little while to get that program kind of in place and get his feet underneath him. But once he did, it's only continued to build on itself and get more sustained and more consistent. And I think, they do a great job in recruiting. They do a great job in identifying talent, but they also do a really good job of developing talent. The same thing we hear about South Dakota State and the success that they've had in FCS. It's one thing to bring in good players. It's another thing to develop them, and they've been able to consistently do that. And OJ obviously deserves a ton of credit for that, especially because there's been a lot of turnover on his coaching staff over the years. Because he's sending coaches off to other places. Brian Bergstrom used to be his defensive coordinator. Jake Dickert, who's the head coach of Wake Forest now, used to be his defensive coordinator. Lots of guys have come through there and been successful. Another thing, and OJ and I were just talking about this the other day, I think the way that they've been able to expand their recruiting footprint. They used to recruit almost exclusively the Twin Cities. They didn't do a very good job recruiting locally, and they didn't go much further out. So it was just the suburbs. There's so many guys from Lakeville, Minnesota, and Eden Prairie, and Edina. And there's a lot of great players there, don't get me wrong. But if you've seen over the last few years, when Brad Salem took over 20 years ago, he made it a big priority to recruit Sioux Falls. And all of a sudden you started getting the Tyler Schultes and the Isaacson brothers and the Ross Petersons and all these guys from Sioux Falls that came in there, Sam Holson, I could go on and on and on, that kind of first built this into a Division II power. They've continued to do that. You look at their roster right now. There's, 8 guys, 10 guys from Harrisburg on this team. There's guys from Brandon all over the place and other Sioux Falls schools. So that's been a big part of it. But then they're doing a good job recruiting Texas. They're doing a good job recruiting Arizona. Those are areas they never used to recruit before. So I think, when you're in a place for 13 years, you start to figure out what you're doing. You get a little bit of a routine, but at the same time, you don't want to, get complacent to where you're just going through the motions. And I think that's where expanding the recruiting footprint, bringing in different assistant coaches, that's where OJ's been able to kind of okay, I have a system here and I know how to do it, but I know how to keep it fresh too.
He does. 9 of the last 10 seasons, they've won at least 7 games at Augustana. 7 straight seasons, they've won at least 7. And then they've won at least 9 games in 4 of their last 6 seasons. So Mike Aldrich and Brad Salem before him took him to a place where winning was kind of expected. It was tough to become one of the better teams in the NSIC. And then Jerry's really cracked the code. In 3 of the last 5 years, they've made the playoffs. back-to-back NSIC championships in 2023 and 24. And again, last year they're 9-0, and they just lose their last 2 games.
And they had a ton of injuries last year. They lost Gunnar Hensley, their star quarterback, but it wasn't just him. I mean, they had so many injuries on both sides of the ball. The fact that they were 9-0 going into those last 2 games is impressive in itself, and it's too bad they couldn't squeeze into the playoffs. They probably wouldn't have gone very far with all the injuries, but I still kind of thought, geez, they were 9-0 and ranked number 5 in the country, and 2 weeks later they're not even in the dance. That was a tough pill to swallow, but as you might imagine, that's been a topic of conversation over there, is how last year ended bitterly and has motivated them going into this season.
I can safely say that this is the first time in Augie history they have finished in the top 25 nationally 3 straight years. I think that's a pretty safe bet.
I think so.
Here they go, and they're expected to do that again this year. Well, why? I mean, you've mentioned the motivation from last year, but why is Augustana thought of so highly coming into 2026?
I mean, it's a little bit of the, you've proven it. We're just going to assume you're going to be good every year. We've talked about NDSU and SDSU obviously got to that level in the FCS, and USD has now reached that level too. That's why a lot of USD fans are kind of, a little ornery that they haven't we earned that sort of respect? You picked 12th. It's the same sort of thing here. People just kind of assume Augustana is going to be good every year. Duluth's going to be good every year. Mankato's going to be good every year. USF, for the most part, still has that sort of respect. There's that. We just assume Jerry Olszewski knows what he's going to do. They have good resources. They're in a place where they can win. They're going to be good every year. Having said that, this year's particular team, there's a lot to like, and it starts with their quarterback. Gunnar Hensley is as good as anyone in Division II. I was at practice on Monday, and I don't usually talk to the coaches during practice, I kind of try to hide in the background, but at one point OJ was standing right in front of me while they were running some pass skelly drills, and I said, OJ, your receivers are going to get lazy if Gunnar doesn't make a bad throw once in a while. And OJ kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, no kidding, because every single throw was right on the helmet. I mean, deep balls, intermediate throws, short throws, on the run, arm side, backside. It was almost comical. Like, the dude is just locked in. And he's a really confident kid. He doesn't quite carry himself with sort of the swagger that a Chase Mason or a Mark Gronowski or an Aiden Bauman did necessarily, at least that I can see, because one thing I asked OJ when we were talking later was like, well, because he's gotten so good, because he's gotten so comfortable, do you ever have to kind of rein him back in? Does he take too many chances? And he's like, well, a little. He's like, those are things we talk about a little bit. But he kind of made it sound like not too much. He's pretty much where they want him to be. And they were 7-0 last year, or 5-0 when he went down. I don't remember exactly how many games he played.
5.
Season-ending injury. Remarkably, Rich Lucero steps in as a true freshman and kept it going for a while. I think eventually the rest of the league kind of maybe made some adjustments and made it harder on him, and that's how they lost those last 2 games. Big hero of the USF game. That was his first game back. Yeah. And he's back. I think everyone assumed, okay, they have 2 great quarterbacks in the portal era. Clearly one of them is going to leave. No, Rich Lucero, apparently, according to OJ, he just said, I think it'd be good for me to spend another year learning under Gunnar and playing behind him. So those guys are both there.
Says a lot about the entire Augie football program.
It does. I hope Gunnar stays healthy all year because I want to see what he can do in a full 11 games. I think he might have a chance to play pro football. I mean, we've seen Jack Strand, the MSU Moorhead quarterback, is getting an opportunity with Atlanta. I think Gunnar's that good. I mean, he is an incredible passer, so he's going to take them a long way. They have Braylon Blunt back, their number 1 running back. Actually, I think they have Max Carlson, Harrisburg guy. They moved him from wide receiver to running back, and OJ loves what he sees out of him.
Oh, man, he was a great little X factor.
And, yep, they got him in the backfield now. They still have Max Strand and Ryan Kenny, guys who have been there for a while. Receiver and tight end, they're always pretty good at receiver and tight end. Sam Skolton's back at receiver. Some other names I'm probably forgetting, but there's some question marks on the offensive line. They do have a new offensive line coach. I think they have 2 or 3 starters back on the offensive line. Maybe I buried the lead a little bit here. The big question with Augie is their defense. They have, I think, nine starters back on offense, and with those 2 quarterbacks and all those skill players I just mentioned, they're good. They're going to be fine on offense. There's a lot of question marks on defense. 4 or 5 guys are back that started, but they weren't full-time starters. There's a new coordinator. It's actually co-coordinators, Chase King and Kelly Skolton are doing it. Mark Sipple left. He took an FCS job. There's a lot of question marks there. We know Augie is kind of linebacker U in Division II. They've always got great linebackers. That'll be the case again. But there's probably some question marks on the D-line and the secondary. One thing that OJ has said multiple times to me, and I asked him if he'd said it to his players, and he said he has, is it might be on the offense to carry him a little bit early on. You know, when you've got that much talent, when you've got that much experience, he's comfortable telling Gunnar Hensley and the offense, hey, there's a little bit of pressure on you. You need to carry maybe a little more than your weight to give that defense a chance to get its feet under itself. We don't want to be putting pressure on a young defense that's still learning, still figuring out how to play together. So you might see some high-scoring games early on. They think they can be a good defense. It's just going to take a little longer than it will on offense.
Augie's offense and defense were both top 5 or 6 in scoring and total offense and defense last year. So scoring points, gaining yards, defending the scoreboard, defending yards, both pretty good. Rushing-wise, Augustana 8th, middle of the pack last year in running the ball, 147 yards a game. And they were 9th in rushing defense. So this is a team that was a little bit better of a passing offense and pass defense last year. They kind of lacked – I don't know if that said they lacked in the trenches or that's just where their strengths were at.
OJ said he was not pleased with how they defended the run last year. That's been a big point of emphasis in camp.
And then when it comes to those miscellaneous stats that seem to be so important in close games, of which there should be several, Augustana was 3rd in the league in third down conversions and 2nd against opponents' third downs. And on 4th down, which becomes more important because more teams generally go for it, Augie was terrible on offense whenever they tried. They were just 2 of 8, so they didn't go for it very often. By far the team that went for it the least on 4th down last year. They were middle of the pack in 4th down at defense. And then you get the things like the red zone, which becomes so important. Augustana's red zone offense 7th in the league. Its red zone defense last. So I'm sure that's a point of emphasis once they get inside the 20-yard line. But you kind of summed it all up right there. Like, we can't wait to peel our eyes on Gunnar Hensley, and the defense has to have some growing pains.
I didn't say this when I was talking to OJ or any of the players the other day, but I'll say it here. Their opener against Missouri Western is almost a must-win because they go to Duluth the next week, and that's going to be they're both going to be tough. I know Missouri Western was only 3-8 last year, but they had Augie beat at Jim Heinitz Field. Yep. Augie had to rally to win that game. I think most people expect Missouri Western to be better this year. They play in the MIAA, which is one of the few conferences in Division II that's as good as the NSIC. They're going on the road on a Thursday. That's going to be a tough draw. And if you don't win that, and all of a sudden you're 0-1 going to Duluth, well, we saw last year, 2 losses kept them out of the playoffs. Yeah. You know, you start 0-2, it's like, oh, is our season over? You know, and you've still got Mankato and Wayne and USF and all these other big games. So that's a really tough draw for them to have back-to-back Thursday road games to start. And that was the point of the story I wrote today for Sioux Falls Live was OJ's been kind of getting after, guys, we don't have time to ease into it. We can't, let's just, figure out who's playing and get in shape. Like, no, we got to be ready to go right away. They already started scouting Missouri Western yesterday. Teams usually wait till the week. I mean, they have a Thursday, so that changes it a little bit. But he said that was the earliest I've ever started scout. Well, I get why. They have to be ready to go.
2 road games to open the year, as you mentioned, at Missouri Western and at Duluth. And let's face it, that's their best chance to lose a game all year, and the odds are that they'll come home with a loss. If they come home with a win, it's a huge steal and a coup, but then they can probably only afford at most to lose 1 more game out of their last 9. Well, how do those shake out? They have home games against Minot State and Moorhead, not pushovers, but should win. At Winona State the next week, that will be a revenge game. Actually, they beat Winona last year, but that was the game that Gunnar Hensley got hurt. Winona State's kind of a middle-of-the-pack team. The big key to the city game, right smack dab in the middle of the season, about 6 games in against Sioux Falls. At Concordia St. Paul, that has to be a win. SMSU's been a bottom barrel team for a long time now. That's a home game must win. And then your last 3 games are at, listen to Augie's last 3. At Northern, a 7-win team last year,
on
who
Halloween.
We'll get to.
going to be a packed house in Aberdeen
And
for that.
Aberdeen on October 31st, that's winter time there. I mean, that's going to be windy.
But, I mean,
yeah.
isn't it a night kickoff?
It is.
Yeah,
6
Halloween
o'clock.
night with the crowds they get in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
That's going to be a tough environment.
And then at Minnesota State, the league favorite and a national championship contender in their place in the second to last game on November 7th, and then home against Wayne State, one of the best teams in the league last year, who beat them last year.
Knocked them out of the playoffs.
So it's a really tough schedule, a tough road to hoe for Augustana. They're gonna be scraping to get into the postseason, even though they should be really good. Again, picked to finish third in the league. USF picked to finish fourth. Tom Frederick, the voice of the Cougars football team, chatted with him about a month ago here on Happy Hour. He picked him third, but he's probably flipping a coin between them and Augustana, and we know where his allegiances are. But same question I asked you to lead the Augustana conversation. Why? Why is USF under Jim Golgowski in his fourth year expected to be right up there?
I think, again, there's a certain respect there. I mean, other than the 1 year where Jim took over and had to sort of figure it out, and they ended their streak of winning seasons, this team is always good. They didn't miss much of a beat jumping up from NAI to Division II. They went 9-2 in their first year in Division II. So they have that level of respect. Jim Golgowski has that level of respect. He was the D coordinator at Minnesota State Mankato, the best program in the league. So there's that. There's good players on this team, too. I think, they lose Cam Dean, who was a really good quarterback, but everyone saw what Tate Schaefer did at the end of last year, and I think people are really excited about that. Then you throw in that most of his top weapons are back. Hank Brown, maybe the best receiver in the NSIC, he's back. Bubba Tan and Christian Nash, their top running backs, are back. Tight end, it's a lot of new guys, but you should see that group. Those guys, you want to talk about passing the eyeball test. I told Jim, I said, I just was looking at your tight ends, not knowing who any of them are, because, again, they don't have the right numbers on their jerseys at practice. I hate that. So I have no idea who these people are. But I was like, that tight end group looks like SDSU's tight end group. I mean, just the size, the bulk, the athleticism. That's something I'm pretty excited about for that team. I think they have 2 or 3 starters back on O-line, or at least guys that have started at times. There's some question marks on defense, but I know they're really experienced in the back end. A bunch of Sioux Falls kids back there, Garrett Hoffman, Bo Giblin, I think another Jefferson kid, can't remember. Linebacker Andy Henson's back. There's some experience there. The one thing I asked Jim was, well, how deep can you go on defense? And he's like, well, we're still working on that. So that's something that they're trying to build. But the big thing with USF is, last year they go 7-4. They had a 18-point lead against Augie and blew it. 2 years ago, they blew that game at home against Bemidji State. They were basically 1 score away from clinching that. They fumbled, ended up losing that. That kept them out of the playoffs. They lost to Minot State that year too. I mean, this team has been a playoff caliber team each of the last 2 years, but they've gotten their own way. They've tripped over their own feet, and the day I was there, they had it was kind of a public scrimmage. They invited the parents and former players and everything. Okay. And at one point, Glow actually stopped practice and went out and kind of yelled at him, and he was like, "You guys, this is what has kept us out of the play." They were running 4-minute offense, and like a guy running back ran out of bounds. When they're trying to run 4-minute offense, and he's like, "That's the kind of shit that will lose us a game." Yeah. And he wasn't trying to make it about just that one guy, but he's like, I get it. You guys just think it's just practice. It's just a workout, whatever. It's no big deal. But he's like, those are the things that will make the difference. When you're talking about 2 years in a row, 1 or 2 or 3 plays made the difference between going to the playoffs or not, well, those are the things that matter. So that, in the 2 or 3 practices I've been to, that I think has been the big point of focus, is almost more the mental side of it. They feel pretty good about their personnel. They've got to make sure that they're making winning plays, that they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, no game typifies it last year better than the Augustana game. They're up, I believe, 28-10. They almost get up 35-10. They either had a touchdown taken back or something.
Guy was wide open
there
in the end zone drops it. Augie intercepts it.
Yeah.
They were 1 score away from Augie. I don't want to say quitting,
yeah.
But if it's 35-10, Augie's like, all right,
and they decided
to
try to make it 35-10 instead of 31-10. They opted not to kick a short field goal, which whatever.
There were like 6 or 7 things in sequence that all had to go wrong for them to lose.
Yes,
and they all did.
500 yards of offense lost. They had a chance with 2 minutes left. They had the ball with 2 minutes left, leading, and couldn't get a first down. They had 4th and 1 near midfield.
Glow said he made like a cut-up of that game.
Yeah.
And look at all this shit that had to go wrong for us to lose, and we did. Every one of them went wrong.
Yeah,
you know?
there you go. But they're certainly capable of doing big things, and you've already mentioned it, but Tate Schaefer, he came in. He was the third stringer last year. The backup Bennett Breck gets hurt in like the second or third, maybe even the first play of the first game after Cam Dean was hurt. And Schaefer just went right in and lit the world on fire. And I think this was the Southwest Minnesota State game. And then, he was the guy the rest of the year. And his numbers started to decrease. There was some film on him. But in 7 games, he threw for almost 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, had a really high rating. And he's got some rushing ability like his younger brother Brody, not the kind of explosive open field speed, but this is just a winner who played at a really high level in high school and didn't need much acclimation to the Division II game.
He looked like the Tate Schaefer from Lincoln High School.
Yeah.
He came in and was Tate Schaefer,
Yeah.
And it was against some weak opponents, so that's a little bit of a caveat. But, given that Bennett Breck had been ahead of him on the depth chart, I kind of assumed that would mean it was, it would be a very heated battle to be the starting quarterback. And it kind of sounded like it was like this has been Tate's job to lose all along, and he ain't losing it.
Yeah.
And even talked to some people around the program, I kind of got the sense that it's like this whole team kind of rallied behind Tate Schaefer.
Wow.
He's the guy that the team. Nothing against Bennett Breck, because it sounds like he's going to play too. He's a program guy, and I know Jim really likes him. That's why he had him number 2 on the depth chart last year.
Yeah.
And he's a little. You mentioned you think of Tate Schaefer as kind of a mobile quarterback because he's smaller and he can definitely move. He's great at moving around in the pocket and keeping his eyes downfield. He's great at evading the pass rush, but he's not a guy who's going to run the ball that you're going to call quarterback power or anything like that. I think they can do that with Bennett Breck, and also. I mentioned earlier, what's the one team around here that's been great at playing 2 quarterbacks? Minnesota State Mankato. Jim was there for 8 years or whatever it was.
Okay.
He's seen it, and I think they're going to do a little of that. I don't think it's going to be 50-50 like Todd Hoffner often does, but you're going to see Bennett Breck too. So that's where it starts. I think Tate Schaefer really has a chance to be, a conference player of the year kind of guy. That's what they brought him there for. His brother's going to SDSU, and I'm sure it was probably between Tate Schaefer and Jack Henry for SDSU. He's that level of player.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, you got Hank Brown. You've got some talent around him. This is going to be a good football team.
Well, Hank was catching 8 passes a game for 90 yards a game. I can't believe
he had a lot of Division I interest after the season.
I can't believe he only scored 2 touchdowns all year last year. Then you
kind
mentioned
of a fluke thing, but yeah.
Yeah, Bubba Tan last year was averaging 85 yards a game, and see, when you have your leading rusher, your leading receiver from a 7-4 win team last year and a promising quarterback, and defensively, I don't know how much you got into it, but what do we expect from the USF defense?
I got into it. You must not have been listening.
Well, I'm getting ready for the next thing over here. Good enough? Yes. Okay. Fair enough. We'll leave it at that. Their schedule. We mentioned Augustana's is tough, especially the end. Well, USF gets Black Hill State, a team that was down to the wire last year in.
Kinda.
You were there.
Yeah. They won in Spearfish last year.
They escaped Spearfish. They got them at home this year to open the season. They're at Jamestown, one of the weaker teams in the league, in week 2. Home to Moorhead, very winnable. At Mary, it's a road. Should win on the road. I think they lost there a couple of years ago, so watch out.
Mm-hmm. But they could reasonably be 4-0.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'll have Mankato. Yikes.
But it's here, right?
It is here, and then they go across town to Kirkby over, and the Vikings beat them last year. It was tragic for USF. They're 8-4 in the series against Augie, and they feel like 2 very evenly matched teams.
I could be. Don't quote me. I
It's
don't argue with you. Yeah,
2 very evenly matched teams.
it's been getting closer though. Wasn't it 8-1 at one point or something?
Right.
Like that?
Yeah. Home to SMSU. They're looking really good here as far as their schedule goes. They could be 5-2, 6-1. They close with Minot State at home, at Winona, very winnable, at Wayne State. That's a toughie. They finish against Concordia St. Paul, one of the worst teams in the league. I mean, this looks very much like an 8-3 schedule that could be 9-2 or 10-1 if they can steal one, and then they just cannot slip on the banana peel in games they should win, as they have in the past. And this could be a playoff team.
Yeah, absolutely.
NSIC-wise, we don't need to get too far into the weeds. Mankato and Duluth, why are they always the best? I mean, they're just huge universities with tradition, and
that helps.
They get a lot of great players in Minnesota.
Mankato probably should be in the FCS. I mean, with just what they have being where they are.
I mean, the enrollment's about the same as SDSU and USD,
right?
And the Dakota school, or the North Dakota schools.
Duluth kind of has a cold weather thing going up there. They get great offensive and defensive lines, and I feel like they've slipped a little bit since Bob Nielsen was their coach. They haven't won a national championship under Kurt Wiese, but they've still been a consistent playoff team, 8, 9, 10 wins. I'm really intrigued about Northern State. They were a pretty good program under Tom Dosh. They went out and got Mike Schmidt, and he's been building it up there. They get the new stadium. There's a lot of momentum there at Northern State.
Yeah.
They haven't fully broke through, sort of, but 7-4 last year.
Yeah.
They're kind of on their way, and you would think now that he's had a couple years to recruit to that stadium, the atmosphere that they get on game days there,
it's great.
That feels a little bit like a sleeping giant or whatever, but maybe a dark horse.
Yeah.
And the north is not generally as deep as the south, so there's that. You mentioned Wayne State. I mean, they lost their 2 best defensive players to South Dakota State, so I don't know a lot about what they've got, but they're just always in the mix. They're always good. Winona State is always usually a pretty good team. Moorhead had the best quarterback in Division II last year. They lost him, and 2 of their transfers went to SDSU as well. So I don't know what they've got, but again, it's a 15-team league, so it's a little different than comparing it to the Valley with 9 teams. There's a couple bottom feeders usually, but this is a very good league. There's a lot of teams that are going to be in the mix.
Just to prove I was listening, Wayne State does have a really good player coming back. The preseason offensive player of the year in the South Division is Dawson Forgey.
Is he their quarterback?
He wears number 0, so I'm guessing he's.
And
he's carrying the ball in that
back.
picture. Shows you our depth of knowledge of the rest of the NSIC. Yeah. Hank Kraft, running back. I can say that confidently because he wears number 21, Northern State, the North Division preseason offensive player of the year. And Northern State also has the North Division preseason defensive player of the year, Jake Adams, linebacker. So,
and yes, Hank Kraft is Tucker's cousin, for anyone wondering.
They'll be good. They will be good. And this is a tough region. It's not just the NSIC. Remember, Division II, you're looking at a region. You have to be top 8 in your region.
I think it's top 7.
Is it really?
I think so.
Regardless,
it's a 28-team playoff, 4 regions of 7. Yeah.
Augustana didn't make the top 7 in their region when they were a top 5.
It's much harder to make the Division II
9-0
playoffs than FCS and FBS. Yeah.
So, Augie, USF kicking off on Thursday, August 27th. A word, we've mentioned some things about Northern State. A word about any of the other colleges in South Dakota. Dakota State, really good.
Yeah, I was just in Madison the other day talking to Josh Anderson. They, very similar to Augustana last year, they went 8-2. They won their last 4 games by like a combined 180-30, just 40-7, 46-0, 52-9, whatever, and didn't get in the playoffs at 8-2. And one of their losses was to Montana Tech, a top 5 team in the NAIA. Their other loss was the season opener to Dakota Wesleyan, and Dakota Wesleyan went 4-7 last year. So imagine what a kick in the nuts that is. Yeah. They missed the playoffs by 1 game, and they lost their rivalry game to a team that only won 4 games. So you can imagine what the theme of training camp is for that team going into this year. But they've got their quarterback, Trey Heddick, back. He's really good, a Selby kid. I think he had 20 touchdown passes last year. Preston Iverson, their top running back, is coming back. They've got a good receiving core. That's about as far as I got into the weeds on what their roster is. But they're similar to some of the other teams we've talked about where their offense is going to be really good. And if they can kind of take the heat off the defense early on in the season, then I think they're ranked 23rd, 25th in NAIA to start the season. So they're going to be in the mix. I'd love to tell you I know a lot about Dakota Wesleyan or Mount Marty or a couple of the other teams, but I don't.
Okay. That's okay. It's fair. I'd go to it if it wasn't the same night as other games, but that Dakota Wesleyan Dakota State game is really fun. Have you ever been to it? That was no, but you tell me every year how awesome
it's
it is.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And I wish they could do it every year. They did it a couple years where now because of the week 0 kind of ruined them.
Yeah.
But it used to be they could play that game and be the only game, kind of the only show in town. So I went to like 3 years in a row, and it's a blast.
Wow.
If you have a chance to go to the game in Madison or Mitchell, you should go.
Is it the opener this year? Do you know?
They play on either that same Thursday or that same Saturday that everyone else plays.
Hey, we're going to be covering the crap out of the Jacks, the Yotes, Augie, and USF, and when presented as something worth covering, potentially Dakota State, Dakota Wesleyan. It's all there. SiouxFallsLive.com to read the articles from Matt Zimmer and Trent Singer for Happy Hour, and Midwest Sports Plus with Zach Borg's features that include the Camp Confidentials in high school football. And a reminder for your college football Saturdays, your NFL Sundays, Gateway Lounge on the west side, Gibbs on the east side. The
We
Rechler
will also be
family.
having a high school football preview show similar to this one.
Yes.
That Zach Borg and Trent Singer will be doing.
Okay. that
We're
people
actually
can-
taping that tomorrow morning.
All right. That people can find at both SiouxFallsLive.com
And Midwest Sports Plus.
and Midwest Sports Plus. And very soon, coming soon, you, me, Trent, others, Happy Hour, weekdays on KSFL TV in Sioux Falls. So get ready for that. For video producer Cordell Wright, I'm John. Happy Hour. Happy college football season. Cheers.
Why are you laughing?
That was a terrible outro.
You.
Casino round drinks.
Yes.